The day is here, ladies and gentlemen. We are getting ready for stage number 2 of the 2022 season of Rainbow Six Siege for NACL. And of course, I've got my regular analysts here. I was about to call you guys hosts. I'm the host, Brimstone. The analysts are CJ and they are Connor. And we are getting into it. This is going to be an explosive stage. We had Connor, I would say, the most talented representation that we've seen in CL so far in stage 1. And I can only expect better things to come because there are changes across the board, and it looks like improvements every which way.
Yeah, the biggest thing about this stage is that it's completely different from what we saw last stage, which already was so much better than stage 1 from the previous year. And the growth that we're seeing across teams is because everybody except Aerial Arise has made at least 1 or 2 roster moves, and it's going to be absolutely crazy. We're going to have to be going and talking about, hey, there's a player moving from here to here to there to there all day today across every single matchup.
And they've moved laterally up, down, between, other leagues. It's crazy. CJ, is there a game in particular that you're looking forward to today?
The first one, because we get Filthy Sosa, who's making his, I guess, re-debut in Challenger League. He's charged through Challenger League a million times and done it, so he's going to have to do it again. And then you've got Elyssar, who, had Kento. He went first in the draft, he went to Mirage, and now we got to see what the new Elyssar is like with Wimpler. It's going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to the first one right now.
Well, this is interesting because Elyssar taking on RentFree, this is the team that, they rocked the early part of stage 1. They were looking unbeatable, and then they faltered a bit. Anyways, they ended up in the 4th position, and RentFree, they're the new blood coming into the league this stage. It'll be interesting to see what we can expect out of them, because they went, Connor, I think they went through as leftovers. Is that correct? They came up through Rels?
Yes, indeed, and they just smacked out last round. That's all we're going to say. They looked really good. Leftovers also through the Gamers Without Borders tournament looked incredibly strong. We're taking maps off of Pro League teams, so they're definitely coming into Challenger League and eyeing that top 3, top 2, top 1, number 1 spot, and they think that they can get it.
So this isn't necessarily a matchup that's in the favor of Elyssar. Let's start off. We've got a lot to talk about with these rosters, Cookies. Elyssar themselves, they had one major change that you alluded to already.
Right, you're losing Kento Richetti. You're losing your carry. The guy dropped 20 like a billion times last stage. I'm not exaggerating, at least twice. He dropped 20 and wins, not in losses. Those were not empty numbers that they're losing. But of course, there's stars everywhere on this roster. Gady Tulidi. We've talked about him a million times. Expect him to slot right in and replace the lost production. Same with Enrio. We saw those two in particular in the playoffs last year in stage 3 for relegations. They've shown they can take over games as a pair. Wimpy, same situation. Even in the NAL, Wimpy looked good. I almost wanted Wimpy to stay on that Parabellum team. I was one of the people that wanted him to stay employed. But now he's in Challenger League. It's okay though. Wimpy will be right back up there. And of course, Alec had a little bit of a slower stage from what we have expected of him previously. Last year, he was literally the prodigy coming out. Went Pro League, got humbled a little bit, came back, and Challenger League and got humbled again last stage. So maybe this is his stage to finally a year later, actually, right? Stage 2 to stage 2. Maybe stage 2 is Alec's domain. That's just how it works, I guess. I don't know. But we'll see today.
I think that speaks of talking about the humbling, though. That speaks a lot to the nature of the game, that it's about finding the right team, finding the right environment, how you slot into a team and what you bring to that team that you're on and what they can do for you. Now, Connor, the unknown entity coming out here, RentFree, not so unknown as you said. We've seen them in a few different areas of play and they've looked good so far.
Yeah, the last time you heard the name RentFree was just a couple of Challenger Leagues ago, and then that team became XO, which was ultimately relegated by last year's Challenger League Parabellum. But this ain't your mom and dad's RentFree. This is a completely different roster, and pretty much only Filthy and Butters, those are the 2 core players that you need to have your eyes on because they are the leaders of this roster. The rest of the team, Adapt, Maxley, Dexter, they're coming in with not necessarily the most comp experience, especially on the side of Dexter. Maxley as well as Adapt, they've been running it up in the T3 leagues. They've been doing really well for themselves and really been kind of those high-level prospects that you expect to immediately transition into Challenger League. And Filthy and Butters, when they built this team, they did look for that talent and they saw something on the kind of potential side that they're going to try to get these players to a Pro League level because that's what this team wants. They're gunning for that relegation match to once again try to kind of bounce back. And unfortunately for RentFree today, Adapt's power has gone out, and it will be Twist from last stage's West Garfield Park team that's filling in for him.
Mm-hmm. And it's crazy. Twist coming in. One of the things it was about a month ago. I know that Tanner Forceful, for those who don't know, he posted an interesting post on Twitter talking about all of the names of people that are out there and available who aren't on teams right now, which also lends to like how exciting this stage is going to be because I mean, the amount of talent that's left off of rosters, they had to make tough cuts. These are going to look very, very good. Let's talk about Elyssar though, because although they came in P4, they had a good, a good stage in stage one cookies. This isn't cut out for them. This isn't necessarily going to be easy. They are going to have a challenge with RentFree.
Yeah, and what's weird is like in stage one, we were kind of hyping them up. If you remember, maybe you don't. We were hyping them up as like, oh, this is their stage. This is easy. This should be free for them. This whatever.
It's a guarantee. It's locked.
You know what's crazy? If it wasn't for Kento dropping 20 in the games I talked about multiple times, they could have very easily found themselves out of the top 6. And I think it's very clear that everyone in Challenger League is kind of gaining on them. This isn't going to be some cakewalk that we thought or what they may think it may be. And the other one I didn't really get to talk about, Pedro. You know why Xset's so good, Connor? You know how much we love Pedro Fernandez. Pedro,
huge Pedro fan.
They lost Pedro, key guy for them, the guy, the VOD viewer, the analytical guy. He's not there anymore. Vivid's had to like take on that role too, in addition to playing in the game. So Vivid's like putting on a super impression. He thinks, he can coach and play at the same time and all that. And that it's obviously been a downgrade of his last stage. And I think it's a direct result of losing Pedro, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Losing your coach is always rough, but when we were talking about losing Kento, sure, you get Wimpy, who is a pro league caliber player and had a pretty dang good stage one. However, it's kind of thinking about where does the puzzle piece fit, and you're bringing in Wimpy, who is more of a flex, maybe up to a second entry kind of player, replacing a primary entry, and things are going to get a little bit messy with that. If he just slots right into that second entry and then young Alec goes up to the more aggressive role, hopefully that's kind of what we're going to see from Elyssar and what would work properly. But if they get a little bit more messy, things can get rough.
It's all about making those puzzle pieces fit together. Do you think they've managed to make things fit together to come into Challenger League on the side of RentFree?
Most likely. I mean, hey, they got here. They earned it. They dominated pretty much every single team that they played through the quals. They played all sorts of different maps, and all of their new players, like the new kids on the block, your Adapt, your Maxley, and your Dexter, who don't have Challenger League experience, they aren't really going in blind because they have the steady guiding hand of two players with a heck of a lot of experience. It's what we saw from Two-Faced last year with Butters. He took a lot of players that had never made Challenger League before, and then he guided them. That's the ATK Luminosity Gaming roster that's won last stage, so he did something right. And you also have Filthy to join in on this. And when you have both of those players, Butters especially, the way he likes to kind of IGL and shot call for the team is keeping everything loose, especially on the defensive side. And if you keep these defenses loose and free flowing, even though CJ Vivid might be doing a super impression, it's gonna be kind of a natural kryptonite to his IGLing style.
Most definitely. And you know what? I want to add this in here. Okay. For some reason, listen, everybody likes to talk dirty about the former Xset players, the last year's Xset team. I want to say, oh, Filthy stinks. In VK, we'll talk about him later. Oh, he stinks. Filthy, it's like the Brian Scalabrine quote. Filthy is closer to your favorite pro than it is the other way around, right? I feel like Filthy is still a very potent player, very elite. And you're going to see it in Challenger League this stage. He may have not been the greatest pro, but he's still a pro. Watch and learn today. Watch and learn.
My understanding, though, is that getting into the very first map veto of the day cookies, map ban, I should say, it's spicy right off the bat. We've got a great map ban to pop up on the screen right here.
Yes, it is going to be exceptional because one thing about I keep confusing the name RentFree, leftovers, whatever. I talked with them during their relegations run. Talked with Twist about it, and he said, "Hey, we like to play every map." You see Elyssar banning Chalet. Chalet typically was a map they like to play. So for them to insta-ban that is a little peculiar, wouldn't you say, Connor? They're still going through with this thing that this dynamic they set last stage where they're not going to really play like Skyscraper. That's still going to be a ban for them. And I don't know if you're
Yeah, I
rent
mean, the biggest
free.
thing, I put out a tweet like a month ago that there is just no chance in heck that RentFree should play Chalet all stage because they are absolutely nasty on that map, and every team should ban it against them. And then when you're taking out maps on the side of Elyssar, like Villa, like Border, those are more slightly linear map on the side of Border and a very comfortable map on the side of Villa that you're trying to kind of remove, especially since this rent-free roster has, you know, a sub. Kind of perplexing for the side of rent free to remove the clubhouse and the Oregon, the very default maps that somebody like Twist subbing in would know like the back of his hand. The cafe ban, that makes more sense because the tier, it's 3-tiered map, a little bit more intricate, a lot more utility heavy. That one's more complicated. But now we kind of come down to 2 maps remaining, CJ. It's going to be interesting. Kind of 2 drastically different styles. We'll see what kind of rent free decides to go with.
And yeah, if you may think about it,
Get a little drum roll or something.
Bank is still there. That's the big one. That is still there in that big 3. That's cut the suspense. Show it. It's not going to be Bank. Unfortunately, it's going to be Theme Park. Actually, a map. Again, we talk about Filthy and these guys. I want to make a comment about rent free player. I think Maxley's going to have an exceptional game today.
Mm.
Watching him on the
that.
FPL streams, the guy has like an attitude to him. He has like a nasty to him. I actually really like, and I think he's gonna go crazy on this map. Especially, we happen to catch who's starting on defense. I apologize, I did not.
It most likely will be Elyssar because they banned first. So yeah, that's just a guess.
I find it very interesting. We'll get the predictions up here. The classic CL predictions. Hopefully, we don't go all one way or the other. Okay.
I'm making a swap, even
Me
with
too.
a sub. I'm swapping to rent free.
I'll swap as well if that's allowed, because Connor, during the segment leading in, also before just having some discussions with you got me hyped up about rent free. So I'll make the plunge as well. What I did notice, Cookies, for a brand new team to CL, I mean, we do have people with CL experience. They obviously did not go down the normal route, and they immediately off the bat got Clubhouse and they got Oregon out of there, and they said, we're not doing the same old thing that's done every single play day and just go to your generic maps. Cookies, we're going to Theme Park.
Yeah, I mean, going back to even the original like leftovers and rent free, that was always the philosophy. That's how they dominated before and ran their way through Challenger League before and became the tempos and the X sets. They played off maps that other people didn't, and that's the championship way. I want to change to rent free. If that wasn't clear,
whole desk is switching. We're all switching.
No, just the desk. Don't let anyone else switch. We're doing our own thing. The casters can do their thing today, and we're just going to do what we have to do. But Connor, are you surprised as well to see a theme park off the bat? This is not something that we are used to in Challenger League. We're used to early on in a stage seeing your more safe generic maps, and then as a stage progresses, once you've kind of exhausted your sites and your knowledge, and you've also obviously found a bit more cohesion as a team, you start to venture off into those more peripheral maps.
Yeah, for me, it's really confident on the side of rent free, especially when you kind of have the last 2 maps boiling down to a bank versus a theme park. You could have the bank, which sure, for the side of rent free, does have more space than something like a Border, something like a Clubhouse, to let their defenses breathe. Have some of the rat plays that we like to see Butters lay prone in a corner on the other side of a map and get a 3-piece on a flank. You have on bank, things can sometimes still get suffocating, and it's really easy to get pinched out as a roamer. But on theme park, it's significantly more space. It feels even bigger, and the kind of areas that you can scamper off to when you scurry away like the rat you are on defense, it's a lot easier. And I think that rent free are going to have a very, very good game.
Well, you know what? We got a lot of our talking out of the way. It's been a couple of months. We've been dying to get back into it, dying to talk about it. But you know who's also dying to talk about it, who's been waiting months? It's our 2 casters. We're going to throw to Lynx and Fellow right now to take away the first matchup of the day, going to Theme Park.
Thank you very much, Brimstone, and hello, everyone. I am Lynx's Brimstone Stead. I am back in my weirdly empty room at my birth home. And John is also here, but he's in the same room he is always in. But thankfully for us, John, while my room might be different and your room might be the same, we're back in Challenger League, which we can always rely on. And personally, I know all the desks, like, I know they jump ship to RentFree, but John, we got to stick with Elyssar, right? Like, we're faithful.
Us casters need to stick together. That is always the go-to here. And funny enough, we talked about similars between our rooms. We've got a completely new team and then one that is pretty much just the same, except switching out one good player for another good player, despite the fact that their roles are very different. So I guess we're sensing a bit of a pattern here today already, Carter.
Yeah, indeed we are. I mean, we talked about, or at least the desk talked about Elyssar's moves, and you and I were talking behind the scenes. These moves, you know, bringing on Wimpy, they are lateral at an absolute worst. They are by no means, at least on paper, they are by no means a reduction in the potential on this team, though there might be some possibility and some confusion maybe in the roles. These players are simply too good, and the system overall has proven very consistent for this Elyssar core. It's hard not to see it panning out. But then again, as the desk also brought up, Vivid's IGLing style has sometimes faced some trouble going up against teams that tend to be a little bit off the wall, a little bit outside of the box, and RentFree, with a sub on the board as well, are certainly a team that if they want to win the day, are going to have to play outside of the box. But there's no point in stalling for even a moment longer. We have the game up right now. It is Theme Park to start between Elyssar and RentFree. A map that I certainly did not expect, but I am certainly glad that I am about to watch it.
Yeah, watching back a couple of VODs from Elyssar, for example, when they've been to Theme Park, they have had a lot of struggles in the past, and that was even when trying to find for entries, for example, and that's when they still had Kento as their entry player, so it definitely seems a little bit questionable, but maybe they're just trying to one-up RentFree, I suppose, on the aggression or just unorthodox play. The Ying is the first of many to be banned, which she can be pretty explosive, especially for those last-second entries, but it's definitely something you don't see every day for the ban phase.
But against a team like RentFree, Ying, definitely a good operator to get off the board, a safe operator to get off the board if you're worried about RentFree gaining momentum on the attack. Theme Park as a map can often just have, you know, maybe 2 minutes of setup, and then the attacking team just sends it in with maybe a Ying or even an Amaru through break window that we see sometimes. So safe ban by Elyssar. Maverick and Cade followed up by RentFree. Pretty standard bans that for any map you can expect to be on the board. And to round out for Elyssar, we have something in the same vein of the Ying, maybe to stop RentFree style of play.
Well, seems like it. Valkyrie as well, pretty good in the right hands, especially when you have a lot of the map to actually roam about. You can help enable your roamers by having someone just actively call on those black eye cameras, or if your roamers in a pretty safe spot, they can do it themselves and maybe work some sort of flank later in the round if those black eye cameras are still up and available. So not a bad ban at all, especially since Mira is not allowed in play due to a bug she's currently having with her black mirrors, being able to have a nitro cell or explosive placed on them and finding a kill through them. So you don't have to worry about banning a Mira because she's currently in quarantine.
That is actually a very good point to bring up, that one of the most common bans in the pool right now, you don't even have to worry about taking off the board in the ban phase. So it does open up some flexibility, even though we might not necessarily see it in this ban phase where Cade and Valk, two equally common bans, come through on the board. But maybe we'll see it at some point later. Certainly in the lineups with no Mira, we will see some still standard operators come out. Initiation in the office being the first site, you'll see quite a few deployable shields come on the board to allow for some congestion over into cash, over into security, to make sure that the attack who will likely enter from that side face as much resistance as possible. This is a site where a setup where a Mira would be very useful to put black mirrors in initiation to watch over on that side, or even to watch maybe Arcade or Cafe where we see one deployable shield setup, but because she's out of play, you'll have to rely on the secondary utility between Wimpy and Vivid to do that job, but creating a Mira window for a deployable shield, that's a perfectly fine trade.
Yeah, you can focus both on the extension leading in over through Cafe, because that's a pretty common way to go about actually attacking against office initiation, and then having a shield pretty much across the map wherever else you are going to need. RentFree so far with them spawning closer in towards cash, I could imagine that's where they want to actually push in from, maybe having someone go over near the control hatch and gathering a little information while the rest of the offense begins to lead their way over on a couple window repels along with the cash balcony as well. And there we have it. There goes the info game, trying to feed in any info towards Dexter to see if they can actually flush out Wimpy earlier than expected.
Wimpy will take down one drone looking at him. A Twitch drone just around the corner, though it moves the opposite way. Never mind. Going back towards him. Dodges Wimpy's line of sight once again. This is a dangerous spot for defenders to play. You see the 6 nades on the board for RentFree. One of them cooked by Dexter. Flies on in, but Wimpy has already vacated the area, but gets smoked by Dexter on the entry. He might have backed up, but unfortunately he stayed still a little bit too close to the attack.
Well, already there goes the first entry favoring RentFree, and they're rather close to the site. We'll most likely have to see that late proximity near the side of Cafe, move in a bit closer and hold some of those light walls just to have extra backup here for Giddy, because currently he's all by himself over inside of offices. But again, those long angles can give him a little bit of backup if need be. But so far, this is fantastic pacing here for RentFree. They just need to gather a little bit of extra information and set themselves up in the right places. They could probably hit the site pretty soon.
I definitely start focusing over towards that security side as well, trying to open up that reinforced wall. They are very much focused on this A site right now, which is perfectly fine if you want to get a plant down or an execute on there. Having Dexter already pushed up into bathroom, excellent, but maybe try to diversify a little bit. After all, they still have a minute 15 seconds.
So far, we've got Dexter going in for even more map control, just about ready to go and hit the site, and looks like a couple people are also fishing in through some flank cams to make sure no one hits them from the backside towards these final 60 seconds. Exothermic charge goes off, but an extra cell is there to greet Twist, equalizing us in the 4-4, but at least the wall gets opened up, allowing an easy entryway to maybe go for this plant situation.
Yeah, Butters has an excellent angle onto the Vault player right here. RentFree are just probing for an opening, waiting for Elyssar to peek or to die to some utility, and Giddy almost gives it to him, but Dexter might find it first. Young Alec goes down. Second kill for the Ana so far, but RentFree as a whole are looking for a third. They know Giddy's in Vault, and down Giddy goes. Butters with that LMG finds his mark, and now everyone left for Elyssar is not directly in the site. Inrio and Vivid both have an angle, but they'll have to play retake at this point. Nice shot by Inrio, but Dexter has been quicker than any Elyssar member so far. Vivid can always be clutch in these situations, but he's just run out of that key smoke utility, and that'll allow not only RentFree to move into the site, but to get up some powerful angles. Filthy on the drive-by just smokes him off of that one. RentFree take a very strong and a very dominant first round.
I mean, off the bat, it was just fantastic isolation. We had Dexter being fed countless amounts of information. He was able to catch Wimpy on the fallback, and he did it once again. Despite Giddy being able to eliminate Twist, the wall still got opened up. He was waiting for someone to overextend. He had the 1-for-1 as there was no information on where the Ion was playing at. The same thing also happened for the Finka as well, and at that point, it was a 4v2, and there weren't many options left for Elyssar to stop RentFree because they were already in sight. They were already getting set up to go for that post plant, and they were actually pushing back the defenders that were trying to hold those longer lines of sight through Cafe Hall, and the other defender as well that was actually trying to go on the retake part. And so that was just a fantastic start for RentFree on their attack so far.
Just waiting for Elyssar to peek, and we saw the defense, sometimes begrudgingly in the case of Wimpy, but other times willingly and necessarily in the case of Giddy, take those gunfights, and Dexter especially did a great job at winning them. Elyssar will switch sites, go over to Bunks and Daycare. The thing with this site is you still need to defend initiation, at least a little bit. Treat it almost as if you're defending 2 different bomb sites. Extend a little bit forward. Maybe you don't need to push or watch as hard in security or as hard in cash, but you'll definitely need to focus on these buffer areas to make sure that RentFree don't get as close to the site as quickly as they did in round number 1.
Seems like the lineup is about the same for Elyssar, and the exact same thing could have been said for RentFree if they didn't have the Thatcher, but assuming maybe getting that hard breach could be a little more challenging here on this site, they want to rock the EMPs, and also with the fact you have both the Wamai and Jaeger ADS on the board, if you can save up some of those EMPs and time them correctly with your grenade player, you could probably break through a lot of utility much faster than what you would expect, because depending on the proximity of those EMPs where the ADSs and Wamai mags are set up, you can disable them, allowing nades just to fly right in through sight and probably find a kill, or at least just break some vital util like those shields we've seen constantly by Elyssar.
If Inrio is going to be playing as aggressively as he is, he might find himself the recipient of a nade, or maybe just the recipient of some bullets shot from Dexter's ARX. Drone moving into Vault, just spots Inrio, then turns around, but gets shot before it can. But they know he's here now, and this is a spot where Inrio might find himself stuck. Another drone going through. He'll just continue to play his life. Maybe try to go 1-for-1 on this spot. He's got Wimpy for support, but Wimpy can't help him in time! What a flick by Dexter! A huge debut so far for the entry on RentFree. Wimpy might answer back with one onto Butters. That key player, Dexter, still on the board. His reign of terror stopped by Vivid. but he's certainly had enough of an impact in the first half of the round.
The smoke just barely surviving, but like you mentioned, the damage, it most certainly has already been done. Your hard breacher is still alive. You have grenades and those EMPs on the board. Really, this is almost a pitch perfect setup by RentFree, and already those smoke grenades are coming out as well to try to stall for time, but there's a minute 30 to kill. This would be an almost impossible position to lose by RentFree unless they just isolate themselves and Young Alec and Vivi land some nasty shots.
Vivid's too low of HP to make that a reliable strategy, so Young Alec, the player who CJ mentioned earlier, has had a hard time in the past few months. Moving back to CL, he's got to go big. Vivid finds one, though. It's not Young Alec, but the low smoke player to get the first kill in this potential clutch. Man count now even. Maxley and Twist, the only two alive, though. They might be at the same man count where RentFree and Elyssar are, but the utility for RentFree is still very good. They have those EMPs, and they still have those exothermics to open up line of sight. You have to worry about the crossfire that Elyssar might set up, of course, but this utility can open up very powerful lines of sight to take down the remaining two players, but it might not be enough. Young Alec gets the drop on Maxley, and that leaves Twist, the substitute, alone. And if you could navigate a crossfire in a 2v2, it's twice as hard now that your teammate is gone, and Elyssar clutch it out with that 2v3. Low health be damned. Elyssar answer back RentFree's round.
I mean, they had to go work a couple of kills in those last couple of moments, and they were just able to, winning a couple 1-for-1s, and it slowly allowed a funnel effect to go in through by RentFree. I'm really shocked they didn't just stack up as a team, maybe open up that bunk wall a little bit earlier, and then just try to bombard the site with a couple pieces of utility, and maybe having a few drones here and there just to make sure no one goes on a rotate, but jumped the gun, and because that, Elyssar was able to bounce back and actually get around on the board for themselves as well. But starting back at the confidence that we saw by Dexter off the bat, still able to go for those 1-for-1s was just absolutely marvelous, and it definitely made Elyssar a little concerned, especially since they had lost so many bodies just to one man so early in that round.
The confidence that Dexter's feeling right now is definitely something to be concerned for Elyssar, and on a map where you don't need to do some deep roams off the site, but you definitely need to extend a little bit. I mean, Armory Throne might be the site that is the least noteworthy example of this trend. You know, initiation, bunks, and daycare, you definitely have to. Throne, you can do a little bit more anchor play, but definitely something that they need to be worried about. I just turned off my light instead of turning it on. Normally I turn it off in game because it gets hot while we're on broadcast, but I actually forgot to do it. So I was like, oh, rehost, turn it on. It's off anyway. So, but yes, I believe we'll be having a rehost. It actually hasn't been confirmed yet, so
they did call
just
it,
have to wait.
So, waiting on an official ruling, but I would assume since someone left and a rehost was called during the prep phase that we are going to get a rehost, but
we'll have to see.
Question mark?
Just have to wait. We're not admins, so we can't make that call.
That is true.
Actually, we don't have, unfortunately, the certified admin license, but I actually do think we will be playing on. All right, so unlucky that you lost Giddy. And I mean, that's, to be fair though, that's one less player that Dexter has the opportunity to kill moving into the building. So even though they're down a guy, this might be a blessing in disguise.
I mean, should I just write in that Dexter found a third entry? It would make sense. I mean,
I mean, no. Because Giddy was the second to die last round. Wow.
Oh, true.
Someone's got to call my throat.
That's all right. Well, I guess we'll have to go in and wait. Hopefully it was not a nade tossed out by Dexter, because that man has been doing crazy things so far. 2 different triple kills, both round 1 and 2. I mean, he's looking like he could potentially find another one perhaps, unless someone disconnecting might have thrown that stat line away perhaps. Map control so far by RentFree has been looking quite well, but the major difference here for a site like Throne and Armory in comparison to any of the top floor sites is you normally have to clear out the entire map on this second floor, and then you want to establish that vertical play, and especially when not having a nomad or anyone actively fishing through any kind of cameras that are left for flank, you could definitely be susceptible to someone just retaking the top floor and trying to go for a hero play.
RentFree are definitely focused on hitting the site right now, or taking down this maintenance wall early on. Mute jammer done, exothermic on, and nobody's there to, well, actually I say that somebody is there. Impact trick, but unfortunately the impact misses from Wimpy, or the explosive misses from whoever decided to throw it, so that wall will be opened up. Vivid's got to focus on actively denying entry into that area. No smoke on the board, unfortunately, for Elyssar, and only 1 C4 as well, so that job is going to be very difficult. Now that player playing on the throne is now gone. Dexter finds his entry. 3 in a row now for the Yana player on RentFree, and he's gunning for a second.
I mean, it's most likely bound to happen. Wimpy's very low in HP and is not receiving a lot of help from his teammates, and really it's only a matter of time for Butters just tries to enter the building and shut him down. There's one for the Finka, goes to the pre-fire and lands it perfectly on the young Alec. Almost a third as well, but the smoke impairs his vision, allowing a team kill to fall through. A headshot by Max, but it won't matter. Butters secures the third one with that LMG, and now the rehost will be called and hopefully answered.
I believe that will go through now that the round is over, but it is one more round for RentFree to tuck under their belts, feather in their caps, whatever analogy you want to indicate that they just won another one. Built, maybe not primarily this time because we didn't see Dexter get as flashy of a play, but definitely a round that heavily benefited from how Dexter has been able to find these gunfights in the early round. Not even necessarily by, doing anything crazy with utility. Dexter has just either moved into spots and been able to win a gunfight, or just waited in positions, and eventually a gunfight is given to him that he ends up winning. So it's a combination of playmaking and patience from Dexter, and right now both are working at 100%.
Yeah, just picking the golden opportunity to go run at somebody and shut them down before someone's able to actually go for a proper trade or even deny the gunfight from happening altogether. It's been really good stuff by Dexter so far in this first half. And I like the way that we had RentFree actually play that round. They didn't take a lot of time to go and clear out the entire map because they're like, well, someone disconnected. We already have a 5-on-4. Let's just try to get aggressive, hit the site as quickly as possible, gather more information, and then we just run at them with LMGs and Dexter, who has not really missed a lot of shots. And it's a recipe for success as now they retake the lead 2-1 as we're in the midst of a rehost.
Yeah, they've done a really good job at focusing on critical positions that, if knocked down, makes it infinitely harder for the defense to hold. Vivid playing behind that throne is a key example. Once that wall is open, just have someone sit on the doorway, have someone sit on a long angle on that breach. If he peeks one of you and the other one is watching, you can make a pretty good guess that you're going to at least go 1-for-1. And like you said, you don't need to clear out the roam as much anymore. The defenders of all, if they are off-site, have relegated themselves to over by Arcade and Cafe. Just go for the half clear. No need to overextend when you're already in a 4v5 that was given to you.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw that perfectly. I mean, Wimpy was in sight as Vigil. You don't normally get to say that all the time unless it's already been like 2 minutes down and he's already done enough jobs as the roamer, and he goes back to site more willingly, not he's just forced to because they're down a man. But we're getting everyone slowly stacked back in the match. We'll be getting ours in through in a couple quick seconds. But besides that, I mean, it's been pretty much the exact same thing. Maybe during this rehost, we could see a little bit of a change-ups here based on who's playing what role, because as of right now, it seems like Wimpy is just hard filling in for Kento as kind of like that heavy fragger or first to get into action. And so far against Dexter, it just hasn't been working out. So are we going to see more passivity by Wimpy? Will there be a willingness to give up more map control early on to keep that man advantage alive? Or are we going to have people just flat out change what operator they're playing to maybe better counteract both Diana and Finka?
I think it really depends on the site. On a site like Throne, maybe we'll see them get more aggressive since there are a few more dimensions the attack has to cover than, say, bunks or daycare or initiation. That can, of course, be a double-edged sword for the attack, but on Throne, you might have to commit to a full clear, worry about some of that vertical presence, or worry about some of those flanks coming later in the round, maybe somebody coming down Dragon and throwing your entire attack into disarray. But on a site like Initiation or Bunks, maybe we'll see them just wait a little bit more. I mean, RentFree's attack wasn't exactly two-dimensional even. They pretty much all sat in cache. Dexter sat in bathroom. They waited for an opening, and after the initial kill onto Wimpy, they found one once Giddy was trapped inside a vault. Maybe we see Elyssar just wait a little bit more, not try to get aggressive and take those angles, and force RentFree to push. Because after all, even though Vivid was in a 1v3, that round still came down to the last 20, 15 seconds as well. So we know Elyssar can delay. Maybe by not peeking, they can delay a little bit more.
And at least on round number 2, when we saw Dexter land that nasty 2K, I mean, Elyssar had the refrag set up. Dexter is just too different, apparently. So he was able to find both kills, despite it being almost impossible at that point, and then finding a third afterwards. So the step-by-step process, it does seem there, but maybe just losing out on the gunfights, that's been the bigger thing. And in that case, it tends to be just kind of a 50-50 gamble on who wins that gunfight altogether, who's in the better position or whatnot. So I guess it is a little bit rough to assume that just in these 3 rounds, we're going to see a recurring pattern, especially since Elyssar were able to actually get a round win on the board just by playing for that patience game, allowing RentFree to start making mistakes towards the latter end of that round. So there are glimmers of hope, and it can also be quite difficult to defend sometimes on Deep Arc if you have a hyper-aggressive team that is willing to just get in your face and go for those gunfights.
Well, it's hard to sometimes defend against a hyper-aggressive team that is still relatively an unknown quantity as to what they're fully capable of. I mean, we had that Gamers Without Borders tournament, which outside of relegations was, of course, one of the first big showcases of, okay, what is this team capable of? And just because it's outside of a normal league, you know, it's not Challenger League, it's not Pro League, it's hard to see what all teams are capable of because Pro League teams might be hiding stuff and maybe RentFree were just playing to have fun instead of playing to, you know, fully sweat it out, fully strat it out. So there's always going to be a little bit of a guessing game. And in the first 3 rounds of a best of 1, maybe Dexter is feeling really confident, but then he starts burning out. This is what this rehost might prove to be as a benefit for Elyssar. They get some time to talk things over. Maybe they want to change around some roles. Maybe they want to change around some play style, but whatever it is, they had some time to talk about it. And with 3 extra rounds on this half to go, rounds 4 through 6, still plenty of time to fix it.
Yeah, and they could also go and save attack timeout, that being for both teams towards the second half if one tends to struggle more in comparison to what we have seen so far in this first half. Initiation will be reattempted now for the defensive side of Elyssar, and once again, there are no changes to their lineup whatsoever. You've got the double shield, you've got Jaeger ADS as well, my magnets, and then you've got the mute as well for a little bit of wall denial and also some info denial as well, because RentFree have been incredible with just feeding Dexter tons of info so he can run in, go for a 1-for-1 gunfight, and a majority of the time, just win it because he's in a better position outright. So again, if we don't see that readjustment of slightly better team play or a little more passivity by Elyssar, a more of a willingness to give up some map control, we could still see Dexter just run this entry stat through the roof because so far he is 3-0 on entry.
Go back to initiation, the first site to start out. I thought maybe we'd see Elyssar actually try Throne again, considering, you know, 20% of their roster disconnected in, you know, in the prep phase. So thought maybe we'd see them try that again, see how it went, but they'll go back to initiation first and foremost. And as you said earlier, it's not like this was a round that was all darkness for Elyssar. There were still certainly some good moments. It was mainly just RentFree able to work themselves in positions, find some kills at the right time, and maybe Elyssar give away some openings to RentFree. We'll see them pull back here, rethink some of their setup. For example, maybe Wimpy doesn't play as aggressive on top Dragon as early on as he did. Maybe he just backs up really early since that's a spot that the attack is probably going to get anyway and won't have to commit too much utility to get at that.
I like the switch up here by Max on the Thatcher off of the Jackal because we haven't seen a lot of proper roam clearing done by RentFree. They've been very direct on a lot of their attacks, even on Throne and Armory, because it was a 4v5, like you had mentioned, off the back corner. So that could probably just allow for better util burn and util denial over on the defensive side, especially if those EMPs meet their mark. And we also have Filthy as well over on the Buck just for extra obstruction and flashes as well. Maybe he could try to go lurk around on that first floor, maybe create a couple of vertical holes underneath, or he'd just be useful somewhere else. Either way, it's still a fantastic lineup here by RentFree, and it seems like they still have the exact same plan of attack, trying to flush out Wimpy as early as possible in this round to get immediately inside of cash room.
So many of Wimpy's rotates are cut off, though. Dexter can watch that hole made in the long hallway that Wimpy will rotate in front of. They've already started throwing nades at his direction, but he seems to have made it back, at least just a little bit. So we'll make it out of the fray for right now, and RentFree won't have as easy of a kill as they might have had otherwise. That long haul and cash are, of course, now clear, but everyone from Elyssar has backed up. And if you want to play aggressive, you can play the shotgun angle that you can see Vivid holding right now if somebody just pushes up that hallway, or play a crossfire to watch the bathroom doorway, where most of the attack was staked in round number 1.
I was going to say, maybe you could have Filthy open up that soft wall. It's already been done, and, well, I guess I'll get cut off mid-sentence by Dexter, who once again finds another entry in this best-of-1 series, and grants a 5 versus 3, technically, as Giddy's currently downed.
Yep. Giddy down, a nade goes in, but I think it might have just fallen short, but Dexter still going huge in his CL debut. Butters has also done some work on that Finka and almost took the life of Vivid from the same position that Elyssar was playing him in last time. It's actually the same 2 players who are alive as in round number 1, but this time it's a different last man standing. Inrio with that 416, playing on top of Yellow, doesn't even get a single kill before RentFree cut him down. 3-1 right now between these 2 teams, and in that round, it didn't look close.
I mean, it's still just the Dexter show. He's able just to walk in and just win a 1, and that just creates so much space for RentFree. They're able to establish very strong map control. Even Filthy just watching the cutoff, that way nobody can rotate into control room to try to hit a flank. They have that on lockdown, so they only have to focus on the site itself, which they are still doing God's work over in through offices, having both the Finka and Iona tag team once again. It's just been way too much for Elyssar, and it seems like in terms of composition, they really aren't changing anything. The only major difference this time is that Azami is on the board, and honestly, if Giddy just dies early on, all those Kiva barriers are going to be pretty much useless, so it's still a huge red flag just based off the playstyle we've been seeing by Elyssar. Very little adaptability so far.
Well, it's still interesting. I mean, there was a lot of talk going into this season about how powerful Azami is, how she might even be a mainstay for the defense in every single round. She's already been banned quite a few times in the NAL, so clearly powerful enough to take a ban spot away from, say, Valkyrie, or maybe even a target ban for some or for some teams on the defense. But we haven't actually seen Elyssar bring her out that much in this game so far. We'll see her on Throne, which I think makes a good defensive site just a lot better by Azami's presence, but I think maybe that would help Wimpy out a little bit in the position he plays on initiation. But either way, that'll be if they go back to it. For right now, we'll see Giddy play with those Kiba barriers right now, I believe, not even on the roam, just a bit closer to home.
Seems like it's a full commitment up on this top floor, but again, you have a lot you can get away with if that vertical play can go down. It weakens a lot of the actual site pressure. It can help open up a couple of hard walls, mainly the one from yellow side, where you can go in through the back of Armory and try to get that plant down. A C4 goes out, but it only brings Dexter down to half. And with the addition of Finka in this lineup, Dexter can just get healed up by an adrenaline boost and then be pretty much back up to full HP to go live to fight for another day. And still, the map control, it's pretty much solid by RentFree as Dexter just walks in the site after, or not site, sorry, walking in the cash room after he's been fully confirmed that no one's there and they've all fallen back.
Elyssar giving this up very quickly. They'll probably hold onto this side of the map a little bit harder, but probably only for maybe 45 seconds or so. You won't see them hard commit on the top floor. At least all of them will not hard commit on the top floor. That will allow Filthy, though, to start getting that soft destruction out. With that skeleton key, he can start remodeling the floor, creating angles that look down towards Vivid or look down towards Giddy, depending on where he rotates. That is a new dimension that Elyssar will have to worry about going into the remainder of this round. Maintenance wall opened up, but a difference from the previous Throne attempt. The impact trick works. That first exothermic is now gone, so Twist will have to put in some more effort to take this one down.
And because Giddy was just anchoring in the site, he has a lot of key barriers stacked up to actually weaken the overall push coming in through by RentFree, especially since they haven't really gotten much soft structure down, as Filthy has still tons of buckshot left in that skeleton key.
The wall gets opened up. You saw Filthy open up a segment of that wall before it was broken by the exothermic to help Twist evade that impact trick from Giddy's impacts, and it ended up working out. But thanks to these Kiva barriers, I was going to say Vivid is in a lot easier spot, but both site players have now died. We will see Elyssar quickly rotate back. Enrio has already done so. Wimpy will now join him on the site. But that's two key players with those Kivas to make it a little bit more manageable to anchor, and a C4 from Vivid, both now gone. And you'll have to rely on the gunplay, remaining 3 Elyssar defenders, because young Alex C4, it's gone as well. He'll instead go for a flank all the way down yellow. This could be the play to make something happen for Elyssar. He'll instead go up yellow stairs, but the flash is now coming in. We're waiting for RentFree to push. Young Alec will maybe push their clock up a little bit. He's taking down Filthy. He's taking down Butters. He's causing havoc for RentFree right now as Maxily commits. He doesn't know Inrio's there. A pre-fire nails down Wimpy, and Twist might just be the savior for RentFree, but can young Alec get to him in time? He's made it into connector. Doesn't seem to know that he's behind Throne. He's got an idea, but there's too many angles for him to check. Dexter, the Menace, pushes on in. He's sitting right on top of Twist, who gets the bomb down successfully, but young Alex finally showing up with the pistol. He switches, and with the pistol, he wins! A 4K for young Alec. 2 on the flank, 2 on the site, 2 rounds for Elyssar.
And I believe with nobody watching that flank drone, young Alec was able just to walk in through the back hallway and secure several different kills, retakes the site from Split, eliminates the coverage on that diffuser, and although Twist had the information, he just was not able to land enough shots, as we had young Alec on a heater of a round, able to grant Elyssar their second one so far in the first half. But man, despite young Alec bringing out everything he could in that round on the Mozzie, it still was down to the wire.
Yeah, RentFree once again just able to wait outside of the site and find those picks when defenders walk in front of them or end up taking a gunfight against them. That has been RentFree's MO so far. That top floor, they still were like, okay, we've got our vertical control, we've got initiation, we've got office. We don't need to push any further. We'll just use the skeleton key, open up the floor, have some people on flank, or have some flank drones, which obviously maybe somebody wasn't watching, or maybe the drone got shot later on in the round, like we saw young Alec do. But they still just waited outside the breach and waited outside the door where they could find a moment to push on in, find a moment to exploit, and then push forward. Young Alec had a great play right there, as you said, but it came down to the wire. If Elyssar just get one more of those rounds, hey, 3-3-1/2, worse things have happened, but this still seems like, at least in terms of the confidence and momentum, RentFree might be patient in the early to mid round, but once they have that moment, they are not hesitating whatsoever to take advantage of it.
Bunk and Daycare, the final site in play for Elyssar, unless we see overtime in this best-of-1 series. And seems like we got the same old ragtag lineup we've seen a majority of these rounds, except when Armory and Throne has been in play. And so far, the util portion of this composition really hasn't been that helpful against RentFree, especially when Thatcher has been on the board. I would definitely prefer to see more maybe of that roam style kind of composition, or maybe seeing the Azami once again in play. I feel like that could definitely enable Wimpy to stay in portions of the map for a lot longer, and we had the Azami keep various be slightly helpful, and although Dexter still managed to get that entry and still eliminate Giddy, I mean, it was still pretty darn close to not landing those shots.
If you just shut off some of these lines of sight for Dexter when he's pushed far up into bathroom and maybe you're not expecting it, those kinds of plays might be shut down, but he'll just wait. And there you go. 6-0 on the entry for Dexter so far. And at least only one kill in this round. Maybe gunning for more. Knows Inrio might be involved and can guarantee that someone is probably on top yellow as well. Though finally, Elyssar are able to trade out that first initial pick. Many times, Dexter has gotten 2 kills to start out the round, but now Elyssar have at least made it even and even taken the advantage. They'll be downed and finished off by an impact grenade. There's still the tricky position of Inrio inside a vault to deal with, but you've at least staved off Elyssar's momentum for just a little bit longer.
With that hard wall open up, you can actually apply even more pressure onto the Jaeger if Inrio stuck in that back vault. And depending on if we see Elyssar begin to overextend a little bit, that could be a pick worked for RentFree to at least equalize and maybe try to go in for this full-fledged execute.
Yeah, the barbed wire start breaking. The nade cooked, goes out, lands next to Uno, just past Wimpy. And finally, Elyssar getting active. Inrio with 3. Maxley alone, put to low HP as well, but does down Vivid and can finish him off with that pistol. He's got a minute left to go as well. So even though he's low on HP, he's got 2 drones active and quite a bit of time to try to find these remaining Elyssar players. Defense does have case control, though, so if Maxley wants a chance at winning this round, he'll have to play it slow.
50 seconds left. Max just setting up a camera for his dead teammates to go and watch, providing more and more information. Almost notices the player deep through the bunk doorway, but they're not going to actually go in for that swing. And once again, Max is just fishing through cameras to see what he can get away with in these final 30 seconds.
Nobody inside a vault, so he's cleared out office. But Inrio has moved up to the daycare doorway. He's watching the door that Max will walk out of. Wimpy playing it more safe. He crosses and does get the diffuser. So maybe light intel for Max to work with. Z-ping going on through. 40 seconds now gone. Wimpy's on that doorway. Ooh, just spots him at the last second, but Wimpy doesn't bite. He waits for the time being. Some more shots for Max to chew on. They know there's one hard left. Inrio swings. Max knows where he is, but he can't react in time. Elyssar finally get a convincing round on the board, and it might be the only defense left for them in regulation, but at least will feel a lot better going into their attacks.
Yeah, pretty strong showing by Elyssar overall. The team play was there despite not being aware that Dexter had just walked in through bathroom, allowing a 6th entry for the Iona player. But the fact that we had RentFree just unable to get rid of Inrio from Vault, it basically forced this beautiful crossfire and tag team that RentFree just simply could not outmaneuver, forced an entire portion of the map to no longer be in the pocket of RentFree, and they were also struggling on the opposite side of the map as well. Filthy died to young Alec, who's holding off initiation. It was a complete stall by Elyssar to now grant us a completely even split going in the second half, and the first site in play now for RentFree will actually be thrown in Armory with a very intriguing lineup. I'm really looking at the Thorn here out of all things, Carter.
I'm looking at a combination of the Thorn and the Azami. The Azami specifically, well, obviously, yeah, it's Azami. But the Azami specifically is, I want to see RentFree make much better use of it than Elyssar did. Mostly because Elyssar didn't make use of it when I think it really would have helped them not only counter Dexter, but counter the overall playstyle RentFree like to go for. And obviously, I predicted Elyssar, but I kind of want to see RentFree use that operator to the full potential that we didn't really get a good sampling of in the first 6 rounds. And with that Thorn as well, if somebody hops in through a window and they look down to shoot that Razor Bloom, that's a perfect time for 1 or 2 RentFree members to take a gunfight and get an easy kill. So definitely looking to both of those, but for me, especially the Azami and how RentFree use her.
And in general, with the Razor Blooms, you use them for the most part to just gather information. If you have a couple of pests that have been activated as well, that can feed your roamers tons of info to go run around the map and pick the perfect moment to go Shrike. Maybe synchronize that with a Nitro Cell as well, depending on if the offensive Elyssar wants to go for vertical. I would imagine that is their main goal. They've got Giddy on the sledge, and vertical when attacking Armory and Throne can almost be a must-have a majority of the time. Dexter will be able to pest out one of the many drones trying to flush him out from his top floor, but so far no one's actually pushing his general direction, as I believe they want to set up another drone to actually confirm where the Mozzie's playing.
Didn't see much success in that position from Elyssar throughout their defenses, but with how well Dexter's been shooting, entering on those attacks, I'm worried he might be able to do what Elyssar was not capable of on their defenses, but he's already pushed back, so won't see the same kind of aggression going into minute number 2. He's moved back to Vault, but right as I say that, here he goes, finds a potential void opened up in the attack setup right here. He'll move into Bathroom, waiting and hoping that maybe they just assume nobody will peek that doorway, and he'll get a kill. The Nomad is already entered, and there we go. Dexter gets that first kill onto Wimpy, who so far has seemed to fall into Dexter more than most of the other Elyssar players.
I was just about to highlight, I love the actual patience there by Dexter, as it allows that false sense of hope. Great Keeper Bear usage as well to try to deny these grenades, and the first one, it actually gets thrown way too high up, but there are still 3 in total, so because of the fact there are no ADSs on the board, it will probably be pretty easy to go and stop these Keeper Barriers unless they just get completely blockaded. But there's one more left in their back pocket, and it actually just works, but there goes the impact trick, but it does not connect. The back wall from Maintenance gets opened up.
And that was a really good play by Butters, and what I was hoping to see, just a lot more creative and, well, usage in general of those Kiba barriers, but specifically that creative usage to try to stop those nades from going over. Sure, it didn't end up working in the end, and the impact trick failed as well, but at least it was something to keep Elyssar on their toes. But now with that wall opened, Young Alec will send in both of his firebolts. He's pushed up, trying to copy Dexter from earlier, wait for somebody to move across this doorway. Flashbang's going as well. The Elyssar's still holding for the time being. They've used that utility, but they have not played off of it. They're worried about the roamer still off site, and certainly be worried about Dexter, certainly be worried about Twist, as Dexter's causing havoc and gaining all the focus. Twist opens up a hole from below and takes down the man with a diffuser. A second kill from him on this same makeshift vertical angle he made in the late round. That's just Inrio with the LMG left alive. Can't get the diffuser. He has to go for these kills. Knows Twist is inside of security, but he's worrying about Dexter as well. Finka downed and finished off by the sub. RentFree take the lead once again.
And again, the patience out by the roam game, refusing to leave as well. It allowed a complete tag team, as you have people in Maintenance focusing on the actual site execution, and it completely distracts them once you see both Dexter and Twist light at the kill feed. They have to worry about the verticality and the flank, and you just get completely collapsed upon by all these angles that the defenders can use against you, especially since they have the man advantage. I think Elyssar just skipped way too many steps in the early round, and it was perfectly highlighted by Dexter once again winning the opening duel, because for the entire round, they had no idea that Dexter was still in that top floor. They had no clue he was in Bathroom, working his way around through cache. They had no idea he was going in for a flank, and they also had no idea that Twist was above as well. I mean, it was just a perfect recipe for disaster, and Elyssar, I mean, they just followed the cookbook recipe perfectly.
A big difference there. When Elyssar was on their defense, they backed up super far. RentFree did not give that ground, as you said. Dexter specifically did not give that round, and maybe was forcing Elyssar's hand to clear him out, which may be still what he wants, to take some of those gunfights, to play his life. Elyssar opted not to do it, and we know what happened as a result. So Throne now 1 for RentFree. They'll move on to Bunks, where we will not see an Azami in play. So maybe it's just something about Throne that attracts those Kiba barriers, because now RentFree, like Elyssar, will opt not to go for that style of play. But if Dexter keeps going the way he is, 7-0 on the entry so far, I don't think utility is necessarily something that RentFree are in dire need of to help in the early round.
I'm really shocked Dexter is just not rocking the alibi pick. That's actually Maxley. He was one of the other roamers, though, that was actually over in on round number 7. He was the only one to die as well in the roam game, and I guess it also allowed a false sense of security for Elyssar once again, because like, oh, Vigil's dead. Surely there's no one else here on this top floor, as we're already close near Cash and, you know, Top Dragon, for example. Nope. That clearly was not the case. For Elyssar, they're actually opting to go in through a cash room clear. Well, they'll have to immediately deal with Twist over near the top of Yellow Stairs, and once he hears the call that someone's working their way in through Cafe, he can probably just go set up on that shield and try to slow down the rest of Elyssar, maybe communicate with his teammates that he wants more backup in this general direction, because all the audio, it's there. He's just potentially waiting on someone to creep up Yellow Stairs first for making a move somewhere else.
Right now, the move somewhere else will be down in Drug Lab. We see both Vivid, I'm not sure who the other person was, but 2 players at least go down through that bottom lab window. Butters is on main stairs, anticipating that kind of play, saying that, hey, maybe somebody will come from below. I'll focus a little bit on top arcade as well. But there is the potential of a couple different areas where the attack could push from. Twist as well, in a different position of the map, but still worried about the same topic, that somebody might come down from below. No Butters is there. They've Z-pinged him. They'll find the drone as well. Half the round now gone, and RentFree almost at the opening pick.
They almost break the stat line as well of Dexter just being on a heater in terms of winning these opening 1-for-1s. Inrio getting tagged up as well by, I believe, Butters once again, but still no gunfight to be found. And finally, the cycle has been broken. Giddy lands a perfect nade onto Butters, and that's the 5v4 for once, favoring Elyssar.
And the 5v4, the first time Dexter hasn't gotten the entry, and the first time Elyssar has, but Filthy spots one down below, so the man advantage is short-lived. Though Filthy might also find himself short-lived momentarily. Low health, somebody just outside that break room window, and he's now hopped on in. They know Butters is off main stair, so they can start pushing up through top arcade and cafe. This is a very difficult position to make work. Might have been alleviated had Filthy taken down Wimpy, but hopping out through the smoke and hopping on low HP, he'll give his life to the Lion. Maxley back in sight, starting to get active, starting to weather the storm. Dexter finally gets on the scoreboard, and Inrio somehow falls, despite the fact that the eyesight was ripped away from Maxley. Giddy's got plenty of bullets, and maybe some time to pick up Inrio as well. There's an alibi very close to him right now, and one that could peek this long hallway. He's been spotted, and Dexter and Maxley both finish them off. The Dexter finishes off one, and Inrio unfortunately bleeds out, but RentFree still wide in their lead.
And one thing to note as well by the playstyle of RentFree, it was an immediate trade. Maybe not the same kind of trade you would normally expect, but it wasn't a 5v4 for that long by Elyssar. They just barely had the man advantage for 10 seconds tops. Filthy eliminates the player that's actually over in lower arcade, and he runs out and almost kills Wimpy. Maybe his smoke grenade did not fully obscure his vision. He could have actually connected that shot and have found the kill on the Lion, but it looks like that wasn't meant to be. But still, having that trade game well established and still having the great amount of team play that we've seen by RentFree time in and time out, it's just enough to where they retake the man advantage and still give Elyssar a run for their money, now having 2 wins in a row in their defense.
And now they'll go to initiation, try to complete the hat trick, and try to get themselves match point. 5-3 is often the scoreline. That is a little bit of a tipping point. Elyssar is able to win one. Hey, 5-4, that's a very close scoreline. I mean, you're just 1 round away from that penultimate round in regulation. But if RentFree win, it's match point. It's a 3-round gap you have to overcome. This can be a big change in the momentum and the mentality for either of these teams, depending on the way it goes. For initiation, we will see that Azami come back out as well. So if there is a way that RentFree want to just solidify their control or their ability to come back from any kind of man disadvantage, look to Butters right now. I know I've mentioned Azami multiple times, but she really is that good. I'm not selling you a false bag of goods here.
Yeah, no con artist in sight as of now at least, with the cube barriers being pretty much a multi-purpose tool. They can be just inflatable shields. They can allow for one-ways to go through as well, making it very difficult for you to actually enter the site. I mean, it's just, it can be very creatively used as well, like we saw by Butters earlier in the round when they were trying to stop the Thermite from actually having anyone throw nades over and get that back wall opened up from maintenance. But so far, we're all going to have the majority of the cube barriers just kept in the pocket for Butters. He'll use them more proactively in this round. And in terms of proactivity by Elyssar, they seem to be rather slow as of right now, but eventually they hop in the building and begin to go in for that recon game, just trying to spot out any roamers that could be found over their throne or armory.
See Inrio down below at the moment, maybe try to pinch that player playing top dragon, which is Maxley right now, but team's already one step away from rotating back down that long hallway towards the site. He's lost a lot of HP, and yep, right as that E1D goes, he'll take that as his moment to back up and play behind this shield. So he will evade death for the time being, but still has an angle from which he can contest anybody sitting or repelled on that balcony. Spots the head of young Alec for just a second, but unfortunately, the Capital not only ducks away, Maxley misses the opportunity he had, and never mind, he misses it. But young Alec certainly does not.
So far, it's looking pretty decent for Elyssar. I mean, the only thing that's a little lacking could potentially be that map control, but now that they have the man advantage, they've got a lot more room to actually breathe, and they still have tons of utility on the board as well. Nades get tossed out through the waiting hallway, breaking the shield that was there moments ago, and everyone's stacked up. They're just waiting for the final rally call. Filthy trying to get hyper-aggressive, but Giddy still on the hatch will shut him down, and now it's that 5 versus 3 favoring Elyssar.
They have that opening, at least in terms of the man count. Still a lot of the positions that RentFree need to be holding are held. They have somebody in waiting and then somebody in each of the sides who could still get aggressive by taking some of these gunfights. I think Elyssar seeking for just one more kill to then start flooding in to either office or initiation. Still plenty of players on that balcony, and there's still Dexter who wants to contest it, but a nade gets caught by the magnet, so Inreal will just send it on in now the utility has failed. Worked himself in the position that Dexter on the attack made great use of last time, and Dexter will make great use of it, at least in terms of fighting back. Butters finds one as well. Dexter going huge so far in terms of the impact. Elyssar now on the back foot. Giddy will push it up, send it in through the double door. The Behemoth and Raid boss has been taken down. That Dexter now off the board. Giddy and Vivid seem to be grasping at straws right now. Giddy the most. With Vivid gone, he's got so many angles to worry about and not enough intel. Knows someone is inside of bunks, but he's got to focus on Vault, and he can't focus on it enough. RentFree take match point. Twist drops lol in chat, and with a retake like that, I think he's justified.
Might be a little bit of a chalker there for Elyssar as well, because they really had that one in the bag. I'm honestly shocked that we didn't have anybody potentially rotate around, for example, maybe going through Cafe or Yellow Stairs just to add a little bit of variety, because during that 5-on-3, it was just the site presence, essentially, by RentFree, but we still had Elyssar just kind of walk in one by one and allow these singular kills to be found, especially by Butters opening up with that 2K. Then we had Twist and Dexter follow up as well. I mean, it was a round that just should not have been won by RentFree, but because of just these little mistakes made by Elyssar towards the end game, it allowed so much more breathing for RentFree, and now they have match point.
And I think this might be a good time to take a timeout. I mean, at least in isolation, losing a round like that, definitely one where the mentality might start getting off the rails. So I want to take a timeout and get back into it. But this is still a case where just RentFree win one more round on theme park defense. They take the first best of one, the first match of Challenger League Stage 2, and one that they definitely needed to win and will be important going forward. Not, needed to win because, they're on the verge of relegations like we have in the later season, but against a team that still has a very good reputation in a lot of people's minds in what may have been, at least on paper, a hard game, out of the way with a really good result if they take this next round.
Well, it seems like a lot is on the shoulders here of Elyssar, especially now that they have to probably attack against one of the better sites here on theme park, that being Armory and Throne, and the lineup looking a little familiar, except now we have a Jaeger on the board for Filthy, and I would assume that with the idea of Elyssar wanting to get that maintenance wall opened up, we could probably have some ADSs procced around near that hard wall to actually weaken the overall clear done with those grenades. We could maybe see young Alec utilize those Capitao asphyxiating bolts to actually make sure nobody can impact trick the wall closely, and that could still allow the wall to get opened up, but that's just all depending on the placement of what operators are in what position, and if we see that Capitao not repicked, and that will be correct, instead we have a repick onto the Thermite to allow better destruction for those back hard walls, and a Nook as well for that element of surprise you tend to see a lot.
that Nook pick from Inrio is really intriguing me, because that might be the answer for how they want to deal with, players like Dexter and Maxley on the roam. Send a Nook in, maybe from arcade side, to push on in, move in from the back by the yellow stairs to catch Dexter off guard. He's obviously aware of that possibility, maybe not because a Nook is there, but just because, hey, make sure you're watching your back. That could be the kind of opening that Elyssar need. We'll see Inrio hop in from the bottom floor right now, and maybe we'll see him start moving up, or even just looking to connector for an easy pick.
Well, he's already in the midst of lab. Apparently someone's droning him out as well. If it weren't for the fact that the split door was barricaded, he maybe could have walked into sight and just found a couple of kills and forced a very early retake by RentFree, but it looks like they were expecting something a little fishy this time around on round 10. So Inro will most likely be just holding a cutoff angle for quite a long time, expecting a roamer to fall back near arcade stairs. Maybe he could work a pick in that sense. But as of right now, it's still pretty much just silence across the board as Elyssar is still taking their time gathering more and more intel.
They've gathered Inrio to get some control down in lab, but beyond that, still sitting out on that cache, that dragon balcony, waiting and taking their time to get some more intel, deciding how they want to push out Dexter. Vivid, of course, has also entered. He can kind of operate on a different wavelength than the rest of the team right now. He can focus on getting that wall open. With how many Kiva barriers Butters is saving, he's got 4 in his pocket right now, along with 2 impact grenades as well. He's got a lot of utility on his own to deal with these nades, or utility coming over to burn those ADSs. Young Alec will get a very important first pick, though. Not only Dexter, but Inrio finally makes his lurk work, takes down Twist, but there's still a lot in RentFree's pocket to make use of, well, stopping these exothermics.
All right, the ADSs also not connecting on top of the frag grenades. Must have been some proper burn by Vivid, as he only has 1 flashbang left, so the back wall will eventually get opened up, allowing a new attack strategy for Elyssar, as they can actually get into the building, or pardon the site, sorry, without having to funnel in this 5-on-2.
Inrio's strategy has worked wonders so far. Maxley will start flanking. Doesn't even see the guy top dragon. He appears on his screen, but Maxley doesn't react. So wired into the stairway, but he reacts in time. Does a lot of damage to Giddy moving on into the site, though. Once Butters falls, that leaves the Vigil on his own. He'll have to hop down. Can't use the element of surprise anymore. He's got to deal with all of these angles, all now looking towards him. One hops up. Ooh, but a nice flick downs Giddy. Nade goes on through. Maxley will have to rotate off as a result, and also play through a post plant as well. Think behind the bomb chassis. Maxley knows he might be there, but his health is getting whittled down by the second. Now just 1 bullet away from death. We are watching the prone angle. Will get his back as Maxley rotates into maintenance and stop the win from RentFree for just 1 more round.
And it seems like the passivity for Elyssar is working out a little more from what we saw in that first half. They're waiting for people like Dexter to make that first move, trying to work that pick. Young Alec was just in the perfect place to shut that down, so the raid boss of this best of 1 was already off the board, and the rest of the round was just pretty darn surgical by Elyssar. They were still able to get the back wall opened up despite the ADSs, the mute jammer, and the Kiva barriers all being thrown at their way, and they were still able to find a couple quick kills on the site to actually get themselves put in that post plant, and it was just a very weak retake attempt, because it was a 5 versus 2 turned then a 4v1 with Max all in his lone trying to go for a hero play. So good recovery by Elyssar, but they are still short of 2 rounds, and if they do not keep up this trend, then we are not going to see overtime today.
I think Inrio's pick for the Nook, and then just sitting inside a lab, waiting for the roamers to rotate back to site, using that common avenue of, going down top arcade or going into split, going down yellow, going into split. That was a really good move, but RentFree are probably going to expect it now, so are we still going to see Elyssar do that? Inrio's already, I was going to say switch to the Finka, but he switches the Amaru instead, so I'm going to scratch everything I just said, because John, I want to see what this man is going to do with Amaru on a first floor site. He's just going to send it in, go for a quick roam clear, control up top. I don't know. But things just changed a lot for how I thought this round was going to go by that 1 change.
That's what I would assume, is that Inrio just wants to hop in through a top floor window and try to catch the roam game off guard, potentially. Besides that, it definitely seems like a very questionable selection, especially since we haven't seen a lot of Jaeger and Wamai comboed when attacking Armory and Throne, so you wouldn't need the extra flashes for burn. And seems like so far in terms of repelling, it's actually going to be Young Alec once again on the Capitao LMG. And, well, across the map, we have Inrio, hop in a break room and kill Twist, because he probably was not expecting an Amaru to greet him in the first 40 seconds.
That Amaru in the break window is always a little tricky to make work because, well, person knows you're coming in through break or can react in time, you're pretty much dead. But the strategy of not only that Amaru, but also just an aggressive clear of the top floor is working out for Elyssar so far. Twist and Maxley both gone, but Dexter, he's still alive. He's still top yellow alongside Filthy as well. That means there's only one person. There is nobody on the site for RentFree right now. It is empty. There is no one there. Everyone is on the top floor, and Elyssar are biting hook, line, and sinker. They've gotten 2 kills so far. They might be able to make a few more work. RentFree will bide their time for right now as Filthy does rotate back, so it's not completely empty anymore, but still the majority on this top floor.
Elyssar having no clue that everyone was still stacked up on the top floor as they are just still trying to clear this one rather linearly. They're not actually working a floor lower as of just yet. Butters eventually hops down as well, leaving the sole survivor of this top floor being Dexter. And I'm not even too sure if Elyssar are fully aware of his position. So once again, we could see a potential flank if Dexter bites his time.
I hope they are aware of him. I hope they are. If they aren't, this could be the game right here. Could be everything gone if they're not aware of Dexter still upstairs. They've all rotated down. And Dexter, he still remains inside a vault. Elyssar now looking towards opening up this wall. John, when do you think Dexter's going to strike?
Oh, it could be in a matter of moments, I suppose. See how well the
Oh.
Nitro Cell does. It gets shot out of the air, actually, by Giddy, I believe it to be. And finally, that back wall gets opened up. I think now's about the good time for Dexter to probably kick it into high gear and get ready to go on this flank once this wall gets opened up.
Second nade goes through, finally destroys the new jammers that Exothermic can go, but the impact goes over, and it misses once again. RentFree very lackluster on these impact tricks, but as the time starts ticking down, question still remains, when's Dexter going to make that play? He's creeped up to top dragon, his first victim goes through. Wimpy not aware, on the drone he falls. Inrio gets Butters, moving in through split. There's still Dexter, Filthy pushes on through. It's all left up to the Mozzie, but if it can work in a 3v5 and a 1v3 where they expect you now, this is a situation that definitely favors Elyssar. Giddy watching and waiting, and his moment comes. The play we were all waiting to happen. It finally pulled through, but the rest of RentFree fell before Dexter could make his full impact known.
And the shock factor plays are working quite well for Elyssar. We saw that with Enrio just chilling out in lab, waiting for RentFree to eventually fall back the last time Throne was in play by RentFree, and then also having Enrio as well hop up, being that X Factor player as per usual, just going in through break room, killing Twist immediately, and then having backup as well by young Alec to force back a heavy portion of RentFree to actually play the bomb site because nobody else was alive to do it. Dexter was able to find at least one on that flank, but because it already started off that round in a 5-on-3, and again, because we had everyone already inside of sight procking down that plant, it just wasn't meant to be. It just wasn't a fast enough flank to actually work out, and the site presence as well was just a little underwhelming. And shockingly enough, although we've had this site not work out twice in a row for RentFree, they are still opting to go for it up until now. They finally switched to Bunkin Daycare.
And I gotta admire the confidence from Elyssar, because to be fair, especially with that Amaru play, these are gambles in a way. You can, get intel, you can find out Twist position, you can wait for defenders to start rotating back to site like we saw Inrio do in round 10. But still to have the confidence to take some of these gambles, that especially that Amaru play again, are just something you're gonna have to hope you win the gunfight on and hope work out. It's paying off so far. It is catching RentFree off guard, and it's giving them openings where just pushing into Dexter like we saw them try to do in the first 3 rounds just wasn't working out. It's always a strategy that you might not be able to lengthen and might not be able to translate into consistent wins, but it's worked for 2 rounds now. I want to see what they're going to try to do here. Are they just going to stick to the strategy they did before and that we've seen RentFree do? Sit inside a bathroom, sit on Dragon Balcony watching the long haul, and hope that RentFree peak? Or are we going to see them try to do something a little bit different? Maybe not with an off operator like Amaru, but still try to catch them off guard in terms of positioning and maybe going for a lurk somewhere over by Arcade to try to repeat their success.
We did have decent productivity by Elyssar last time Bunkin Daycare was in play by RentFree. They immediately burned through the shield that was over near Cafe Hallway. They had Giddy throwing out grenades, which ended up netting Elyssar their first 5v4 in this best of 1 series, favoring them. So they were pretty aggressive when they were actually trying to attack. It was just towards the end where they didn't have as consistent of a trade setup as RentFree did, which eventually cost them that man advantage and the round altogether. So just that slight better team play that we could potentially see, that could maybe be their saving grace to guarantee overtime, because at the beginning of this round, when they last played this site, they did pretty darn well. Again, it was just the end game that had them caught up.
I think that is a really good point. They were still able to make a lot of good use of that utility in the early round. That might still pay off here if RentFree are playing their same positions, which it generally looks like they are, that we don't see Butters playing on arcade stairs like he was last time. He's in a different part of the map, and it's just Filthy playing on the railing that is filling that same role. Butters is instead pushed very far up, playing by that deployable shield in the doorway, but sitting on the arcade machines right now. That could allow Inrio to fill that space on main stairs a lot earlier and get an important piece of control, so long as he's watching those railings.
Shield is finally destroyed via a frag grenade. Butters almost gets caught by the shrapnel as well, but is able to evade it for the time being. A minute 30 gone, and it's about the same pace that we saw last time when the site was in play, but still no entry to be found just yet for either team. It's still tons of information being gathered out by Elyssar, and I think they still have somebody trying to maybe creep their way up through arcade stairs. That being the player with Case, that's a pretty big risk, and if Vivid ends up dying, this could be a huge disastrous round here for Elyssar.
But it's also a gamble that Elyssar might not be able to mitigate with information. They only have 3 drones right now, and most of them not on flanks, but still in active use, and that means at risk of being shot. So if you want to push them up main, now you've only got 2 with Vivid. With that Case, he is pushing a very difficult position to make work. So many angles you have to worry about, and they're just not even aware that Filthy has filled this gap. Inrio caught completely off guard. This is looking like a regulation win if Elyssar can't get things back on track. Vivid is pushed up. He's taken Inrio's spot. He knows there's somebody inside of daycare. But RentFree are holding the line right now. Wimpy might just have the position. He's outside, still in that break room window, hitting those EE1Ds where he's been before, and he's taken down Dexter, one of the key players for RentFree so far. Though he has a little bit tapered off the remainder of this game. Twist pushes up with a shotgun, retakes outside of arcade. Wimpy falls on break. It's just Vivid 1 in 6 since the rehost to keep overtime hopes alive. Maxley's feeling himself. He's getting confident sitting inside that angle. It's not Maxley, it's Twist, excuse me. But they know where Vivid's position is. They're waiting, and finally they strike. 7-5 for RentFree in their Challenger League debut. And Elyssar, after what was a little bit of a disappointing Stage 1, will have to go a little bit longer without a victory in Stage 2.
And it seems like the honeymoon phase that we saw by Elyssar in Stage 1 of Week 1 is not going to be a pattern that we will be seeing here. They actually start out with a loss in their first matchup here on Stage 2. They brought it back a little bit over in towards the second half, but they still just had a lot of major basic issues. And I think with the fact that Wimpy is just a new addition to their team, that's going to be something that will be molded in time. But RentFree able to take advantage of that and manage to force out a relatively awkward map to play on when you're having a new addition on your team is definitely a huge net buff for them, even though they also were playing with a sub. Funny enough, it just seems like Twist was more compatible with the roster of RentFree than Wimpy was with Elyssar so far.
Well, and also, I mean, we talked about it quite a few times, but
yeah,
7-0 on the entry in the first 7 rounds. That is just something that is almost impossible to deal with from Elyssar on a strategic scale.
He almost had 20 kills.
Exactly. He almost had 20 kills. We had a rehost, and he had 11 kills since that rehost.
Yeah.
The man was playing out of his mind for the first Playday of Challenger League, and definitely a statement to be made. And I'm sure the desk will commend a little bit, Elyssar trying to adapt with that Nook play, with that Amaru play, but still, the debut that RentFree had from players, like Maxley had a good job. Twist did his job as a substitute, but Dexter, with that stat and with the play he had, absolutely outstanding. But that's all for John and I for right now. I believe we'll throw it to the analyst desk to break down what, of course, Brim, Connor, and CJ did predict, which is a RentFree victory, and I'm sure they'll brag about it.
Boy, I'm sure glad I listened to you, Connor. That's one of the few times I've actually made a smart choice prediction-wise. Okay, RentFree comes out, Connor. They put their stamp on this stage so far. Now, there's a long way to go, so I'm not, putting the cart ahead of the horse here, but it was an impressive first showing for them.
Yeah, they looked incredibly good. And for the side of RentFree, there were a lot of their attacking rounds that it almost feels like LSR just gave them. Because if you notice, there was just not a single ADS burned or not a single zombie Kiba barrier shot down. And there were still shields left up on the side of LSR's defense. And RentFree, they were still able to just win, not with nades or flashbangs or any other explosives. They won the rounds entirely just with bullets. And then when you swap onto their defensive side, still a lot of the creativity and a lot of the free flowingness of their defense came out, and it made LSR kind of look scared to take some gunfights. And then after that momentum was gone onto the way of RentFree's side, it almost came too much to kind of overcome and bounce back on.
The one thing I noticed, and we were talking about this as we were watching it, Cookies, although it wasn't a lopsided match, it was a 7-5. It could have gone to overtime. It was close. We're sitting there in the first half watching the site choices of LSR and just kind of throwing up question marks, like not utilizing Throne, which is known to be one of the best defensive sites in the game. And it was a rough defensive half for them. I know it was a split, and they ended up, cleaning it up by the end, but it didn't start off well for LSR.
Well, it's hard to start off well when Dexter is just
Yep.
putting his foot in their mouth for the first 7 rounds,
Yep.
apparently. And then, of course, Connie talked about how it was just seemed like LSR was just kind of waltzing in front of angles and just kind of giving up kills instead of maybe seemed like the angle knowledge wasn't really there. And even going back to last stage, they actually lost Oclix on this map too. Same type of way. It seemed like Oclix was more based than them on this map. I don't know if you're gonna have your LSR, if you're just gonna shelve it going forward, but definitely seems like it has become one of their shakier maps. So it's entirely possible we won't see that going forward.
And Connor, I mean, this was, we'll have the stats pop up shortly, I'm sure, but this was a stat matchup. You had Dexter popping off for the side of RentFree. And then when we look over at LSR, young Alec, Giddy, and Inrio also had very good games, but a little bit lacking on the side of for Vivid and Wimpy.
Yeah, it was a rough showing from Wimpy, who's on a completely different role than what we saw from him in Pro League with Parabellum. No longer on the second entry. Now he's kind of onto a flank watch role on the attacking side, and that can be a hard transition. He's not going to be as involved and more in those gunfights that are a bit more fun to take as an attacker. So, not surprising to see his performance dip. But on the side of RentFree, oh my goodness, Dexter, you look at that entry number. Caster
Can we
talked
talk
about it.
about
We've
that?
already touched on it. We need to bring it up again and again because that is absolutely dominant. Sure, we can say maybe a good amount of it is the giant crater-sized hole that Kento has left in the early round kind of strength on the side of LSR, but Dexter's also an incredibly great player, and I think he has a lot of upside, and a lot of people are going to know his name by the end of this stage.
That's an entry stat that if you are not part of entries for the rest of the stage, that could carry you on the leaderboards. And you know what? Just as fate would have it, it's Dexter that we're going to be talking to for the interview. So he gets to shine on his first matchup, and now we get to talk to him. Dexter, congratulations on the win for the team. Obviously, you guys have been able to play together, but what was the synergy like on this first day in Challenger League? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hmm. You yourself had a phenomenal day. Were you feeling it today? Were there any nerves positively? Because obviously it worked out well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. LSR, they were a great team last stage. Obviously, they're still good now. It was a close matchup. Do you guys see yourselves doing well matching up against the other teams? Because obviously you have some knowledge of these players and these other teams. How are you liking the outlook for your stage early on now? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, if you just go 18-8 every single game, I think you guys have a pretty good shot maybe down the road. Thanks for your time, Dexter, and good luck in your next matches. Absolutely killer. I mean, player of the day possibly already outside of the first match. Who knows at this point? But the 7-1, I can't get this out of my head. I'm trying to think of other things, Connor, and yet this 7-1 is just like seared into my mind.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is just dominant on the early round, always playing a 5v4. That's a lot easier to play than a 5v5 or a 4v5. As well as, just Dexter had the power up. He was playing from the exit practice room, and you saw Kino giving little waves behind. We were talking so much about on the side of Elyssar of, is the puzzle piece going to fit? Dexter didn't have to worry about that because he had Kino telling him, hey, life's a puzzle. And then everything made sense, and he goes off and has a crazy game.
Well, folks, if you're voting on these games, the best thing you can do is get yourself a pair of really good analysts to just tell you what to do, because that's what I did, and I got the vote right going to RentFree. But that's only one match down. We've got 4 more today. The next one after this break coming up, don't go anywhere. It's going to be One Shot taking on Luminos.